What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on the
Welcome to
way.
Live Prayer.
It's waiting.
And welcome to Live Prayer. I'm Bill Keller. Thanks for being with me on this Tuesday night. Pray you had a good day today, and it's been a quick 23-hour turnaround, hasn't it? God bless you. Thanks for being with me tonight. We've got a lot of things to cover tonight. It's been kind of an interesting day. I've always said, if you watch this program before at any point in time, I've always talked about how God is the ultimate executive producer. If there's an executive producer of this program, as every program has one, trust me, it's not Bill Keller, it's God. It's just amazing how the news falls kind of in your lap so many days. And today's one of those days. I was reading through things. I said, we just talked about that the other night. We talked about that about a week ago. Just a lot of things to share with you tonight. Reinforce a few of the things that we've spoken about recently. But importantly, I think today's program puts into perspective that much more. Kind of the big picture of where things are at in our country right now. And I'm just kind of setting the stage a little bit before we get going, just because I know a lot of nights in the program, some of the things that we touch on don't sound, like they have much of a spiritual application. And I grant you, some don't, but some of those type of items, while they may not have a direct spiritual application, what they do have, and the reason I bring them up, is so you can get a big picture view of the culture at large. And we've got a lot of that tonight that immediately you may say, well, that sounds more like a political issue, whatever. And on some issues, you're probably right. And I'm not bringing them up for the politics. I'm bringing them up for the overall consideration of our culture at large. Because don't forget, as Christians, we live in this world. We're not of the world, but we do live in this world. And if we're going to affect the world, we've got to understand the world we're in. Hi, Fly Prayer.
Yeah, Bill, I'm watching you on Roku and YouTube. Your audio and video is pretty distorted.
Okay, I'll let our text know. Thanks, buddy.
Yep, no problem, Bill.
Let me just thanks, buddy. Let me just hit the tech real quick here. I just want to check on something because I know last time I had a couple problems. Everything on this end was showing good. So let me just call him real quick, and then we'll get moving. A lot of the things, like I said, hello? All right, just check out. I just got to call some people at Roku and a few other places. It's kind of distorted a little bit, so just check into it, okay? I'll talk to you after the show. All right, so they'll kind of tap into what we're doing, check it out. Looks like maybe a bandwidth problem on our end, I don't know, but we'll just plug through it and stay with me and we'll follow it. Ask your hand of protection over the program tonight, over the technical side of this program. Lord, we try to remember to pray about this every day because for this brief season, Satan is lit. He's loose. He's the prince of the power of the air. We're in his space, so to speak, although all things belong to you. But we're in the space that he's trying to control. And he doesn't want this type of a message going into the ears and the minds and the hearts of people. So we pray that you'll protect the technology side of this program. I have friends tonight. Pray that you'll watch over and bless them tonight. Be with them in the midst of whatever needs they face. We pray for needs to be met tonight. And Lord, right now we just submit this time to you. In Jesus, we pray. Amen and amen. All right, so as we bust through a lot of these issues tonight, and I'll backtrack to this big picture, because again, a lot of these things are making up the culture we live. And as I said previously, we don't, we live in this world, and all that. I understand that. But at the same time, we've got to be effective in the world that God has placed us. We've got to be effective these few days in this life that God has given us. And the more information you have. There was a movie that kind of was the epitome of the 80s, and it came out right at the end of the 80s. Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen, Sheen's father Martin Sheen was in it, Daryl Hannah, I believe. And kind of if you were in the securities industry like I was, ever trading bonds, futures, whatever, currencies, in the in any of that type of a world, commodities, options. Everybody was alive in that world at that time. Probably watched Wall Street 100 times. Okay? And one of the things about the movie, though, it brought so much out about that culture at that time. And it was a culture of greed. And understand how to be effective in the culture God has placed us. We've got to be able to understand the culture we're in. So that's a reason I'm bringing some of these things out as we go through our programs each night, to help you better comprehend what's going on in the culture around us. Obviously, of course, I'm Bill Keller, founder of liveprayer.com, web address. Check us out. If you don't get the devotional, sign up to get it. I'll try to remember to put our address up at the end. I know people keep saying put your address up. But if you want to help us financially, you can always go to the website. There's a button there on the website, and that will enable you to help us with a gift, either on a credit card, or you can send us a check, whatever's easier for you. But pray about helping us. Before this program, back in the old days, it was 40, 50 grand a month. We cut it down. The last time, the last 3-year run we had on TV before we shut it down to retool everything for strictly streaming, it was costing about $25. We're down to about $5,000 a month now, just for the TV show. But that $5,000 a month covers everything. The band. Now, obviously, it only covered bandwidth up to about 100,000 viewers. But, if we're over 100,000 viewers a night, whatever the extra funds we're spending with, it's well worth it, because we've got that much of an audience. So just be praying about what you can do to help us to make sure we're here and we're strong and we keep this message going out. Because, again, I've been doing this show pretty much for 15 years. We've probably been on a 13 of some of those 15 years on a nightly basis. So Satan knows all about this program. He's not all-knowing. He's not omnipotent. He's not all-powerful. He's not omnipresent. He's not everywhere. But he's not stupid either. And he knows where to go to try to inflict the most pain on God's plans. Obviously, we know at the end, God wins, Satan ends up in the fiery pits for eternity. Okay? So we have that knowledge, so we should have nothing to fear. He's a defeated foe already. He's a toothless lion. All right? But we still have to deal with him, and that's why God gave us in the Bible, like Ephesians 6. We battle not against flesh and blood and all that. Just be praying for the technology side of this, and be praying as we continue to roll this program out and more people find out about us. All right, let me jump in real quick on one issue I promised I talked about. And I don't need to spend much time on it. The Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a cult. They were founded about a couple hundred years ago by a guy named Charles Taze. They were originally also called the Russellites. And you may be more familiar with their publication, The Watchtower. And it's the official publication of the Watchtower Society, which is who the Jehovah's Witnesses are. Now, they're a cult, if for nothing else. There's one theological issue that makes them a cult, no matter what else they believe. And that's like the Mormon cult, they deny the deity of Jesus. In other words, their teaching Jesus is not God. He's not a deity. He's just a man. To deny the deity of Christ is to deny the gospel. Because if Christ was not God, the best he could have done was live a sinless life for the forgiveness of his own sins and nobody else. So any belief system that claims to be Christian, that denies the deity of Christ, is not Christian. Also, like all cults, their final authority isn't the Bible. It's the writings of Charles Taze Russell that you find in the Watchtower publications. So there's not much really more to talk about with them other than the fact that like the Mormons, they claim to be Christians, but they're not. And they're kingdom halls, okay? They prayed heavily in the black communities. Prince was a Jehovah's Witness. Serena Williams and her sister, they are Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes. Serena Venus. So the Jehovah's prayed heavily in the black community and still has most of its presence in the black community. Not exclusively, but it makes up a large percentage of their organization. And it is a worldwide organization, just like the Mormon cult is. There you go. All right, let me bust through some of these things here. The head of the Arizona public schools was just came into office in the last couple of days. Here's another one. I mentioned to you the other night the new senator from Arizona that was taking over the seat of retiring Mormon Senator Jeff Flake. There's ever a guy with a perfect last name, it's Jeff Flake, okay? But that was at Kristen Sinema. Used to be with Code Pink, the radical anti-war group. And when she was recently, this week, late last week, was sworn into the Senate, she openly bisexual, which means she embraces sexual perversion, proud. And she refused to be sworn in on a Bible. She had her hand, I think, on a pocket constitution. Well, the head of the Arizona Public Schools, also an antagonist towards Christianity, took her oath on a children's book about a moose. All right, and I know people are probably saying, well, what's the time of day? One of the things I'm trying to help you see, especially with all these things I'm going to bring up tonight, this is the erosion in our culture of Christian norms, Christian influence. We're seeing real pushback and rebellion to Christians and Christian influence in our society. Even at the kind of the last bastions where a lot of that resided, I mean, most politicians at the national level and in the local levels claim to be Christians, whether they truly believe, only God knows that, but that's what faith they claim. But you've got an outsell now on that being true with the election of Muslims. And again, this is not a theocracy, so I'm not saying this is what, all I'm trying to tell you is, again, these are just examples of an eroding culture in terms of the influence Christianity used to have on the culture. I've told for a long time now, and I've written in my devotional over and over how the Christians and our Christian faith, we're supposed to drive the culture. In other words, we're supposed to be a godly influence on our culture. When in fact, what we've been seeing, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, is a culture that's driving Christianity, or those who claim to be Christians, they're allowing the culture to dictate to him. That's when you get into foolish issues. We talked about last night the churches that are struggling with, well, what do we do about transsexuals? Call a doctor. That's what you do. It's nothing up to debate, just like there's nothing to debate about people who are unrepentant, practicing homosexuals and lesbians, gays and lesbians. There's nothing to debate. God calls it a sin. There is no debate. God said it. That's it. But again, when you're not driving the culture, but the culture is driving you, that's when you get into these type of ridiculous situations. And let me get this guy's name again right real quick. Pastor Justin Hope, Northern California. This is the pastor with a big sign outside of his church that he's just blasted for. Bruce Jenner's still a man. Homosexuality is still a sin. There you go. That says it all. Says it all. And this isn't, Southern Poverty Law Center, the self-appointed group that are made up of a child molester, Morris Dees, and all these ex-ACLU lawyers that are a hard leftist organization that hate Christianity. Bill Keller, me personally, and Bill Keller Ministry, we've been on their hate map for a dozen years now, along with groups like Black Panthers, neo-Nazis, skinheads, these different groups that go out and basically create their own armies. All of the groups that do take a hateful stand against certain people in our country. The militia movement. What was my hateful act? I happen to believe the Bible that says homosexuality is a sin. I happen to believe the Bible that says marriage is between a man and a woman. I happen to believe the Bible that the only way to heaven is in Jesus Christ, not some mythical, magical, non-existent God named Allah, propagated by a false religion / political idea that's been around for 1,400 years. Because I speak out against the lies of this world and the support of the word they are found in God's word, I'm a hater. So when I talk about, when we transgender people having a mental, it is a mental illness. I don't hate transgender. We've served many of them over the years. And they're confused. I mean, does it surprise you they're confused? Does it? I mean, just think for a second. Use common sense. How confused do you have to be to not know whether you're a boy or a girl? I mean, that's about the ultimate confusion. And I've told you many times, nobody I've ever dealt with that was engaging in the sin of homosexuality, having sex with people of the same sex, none of them, when honest, come clean that they know this isn't right. It's probably the guy, shooting heroin in his veins. He's sitting there with that needle in his arm. I'm sure at some point he's looking at the blood dripping out of his arm and collapsed veins and the track marks, and he's got to be thinking this guy. It's not because we hate him. It's because we love him. And I love to put myself on the front lines and share the truth with people and share with people that are caught up in these bondages. Jesus died to set you free. All right, so we got the head of the Arizona Public Schools taking her oath to office on the Book of Mormon. By the way, there is no legal requirement that you take your oath for any office on a Bible or anything. people choose to do that, but not a law. Just from a strictly legal standpoint, if you didn't know, no law that says you have to be sworn in on a Bible. Your oath is what is the legality. The oath that you're taking. The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth in court, or whatever your oath is for a certain political office. That's the legal aspect of that ceremony. Technically, whatever you choose to. If you use any kind of a book or whatever is fine. All right. Mayor de Blasio, New York City. And I'm not going to go into his bio, but if you didn't know, this guy is an ultra-socialist. I mean, I'm talking about lifetime rap, okay? And it just kind of gives you an indication of how far down the toilet New York City is that he's their mayor. I'm just being blunt. He had a big where he's going to give health care to everyone, including illegal aliens. So if you're in New York City, you get free health care. Of course, you got one little aspect of this whole little speech he had today. Who the heck's going to pay for it? On the same vein, Gavin Newsom. It's been a bunch of things. Mayor of, or the governor of California. He was the mayor of San Francisco, governor of California. He proudly reinforced California as a sanctuary state, which technically means they're in total violation of federal immigration laws. And I can't believe at some point the federal government isn't going to challenge him. Do you remember back when Jan Brewer was the governor of Arizona, and under Obama's Justice Department, Eric Holder really refused to uphold or execute the immigration violations. And Jan Brewer said, well, if you won't do it, we will. So she utilized state of Arizona resources to basically do what the federal government was supposed to do, and Holder sued her. And federal law trumps state law. So I've got to believe at some point there's going to be an end to this madness in California. Of course, California, if you remember, that's the state where this police officer Singh, day before Christmas, pulled over a guy on suspicion DUI, got shot and killed. Hours earlier was celebrating Christmas Eve with his wife and 5-year-old. Beautiful picture with their tree and their presents, all that stuff. And he never came home that night because an illegal alien that had busted twice for DUI and should have not even been in the country killed him. So Gavin Newsom, governor of California, he's another one. Free health care for everybody. California is in financial, they've got unfunded pensions and liabilities in the tens of billions of dollars. And yet they're going to give free health care to everybody. And see, and I know these things may sound like political issues, but let me throw one more log on this fire, and then I want to wrap up these situations for you so you understand why these are important to talk about, even in a spiritual sense. Washington State Governor, he just pulled the Band-Aid off, ripped it off. He's just straight now. They want single payer. And single payer, the easiest way to explain it, it's basically government health care. In other words, again, Washington State just wants everybody to have health care. State will pay for it. How? Who knows? Nobody ever talks about that. And I told you along where Obamacare was always, Obamacare, the only way they got that passed was lying. Like your doctor, keep your doctor. Like your plan, keep your plan. If average family is going to save $2,500. Jim Gruber, the MIT professor who was one of the architects of putting that whole scam together, afterwards was caught on video bragging to people how they lied to the people to get it through, how the people were so stupid. They never would have gone with this if they really knew the truth, so they just had to lie to them, and people were so stupid that they believed the lies. And they got a new generation in the House of Representatives, like this Ocasio-Cortez and all these. You've got a good dozen or 50 real hardcore, unapologetic, radical socialists now in the House of Representatives. And they all want basically single payer. And it's a mess. It's a mess. So, and the reason I'm bringing these things up is because these are all issues that may not seem to be very spiritual to you, but what they're doing is they're creating an atmosphere in this country. They're pushing agenda in this country for government control of everything. Denver. Don't forget Colorado has the legalized pot. I've got some good friends in Colorado, in different law enforcement agencies, both state and local communities. They're having a nightmare with the legalized pot, and most of the nightmares are coming on the roads. And they're developing new tests now to try to determine what level of toxicity does a person have to be declared driving while impaired. You know, DUI is alcohol, but in every state, it's really a DW, driving while impaired, and that impairment can come from alcohol, it can come from drugs. A lot of people never take a drink, but they're hooked on different pills and things. And that'll impair your ability to drive just as much as drinking a gallon of vodka. Well, now Denver wants to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And I told people back in 2013, I think, when all these states started to roll these states out with the legalized pot and stuff. Again, it's like the gay marriage. Okay, what society accepts gay marriage? Once they cross that threshold and basically redefine God's holy institution of marriage. Now, man can redefine it, doesn't definition. Just like a man can call himself Judy, doesn't make him Judy. Okay? Doesn't change who God created that person as. But you've got these states now that are embracing the pot thing, and I told people once, with the gay marriage, once they did that, they could have pedophilia being recognized. You could have polygamy. You have people bearing inanimate, all that. And I said, same thing about the pot. Once you do the pot, now you got Denver wants to utilize psychedelic mushrooms. I'm shocked, really, that one of these whack jobs hasn't come out wanting to just legalize heroin. Seriously. And they'll make this humane case. It's better they buy legalized heroin in the street. I mean, it's unbelievable. This is the culture we're living in, though. That's why I'm talking about these things. And I've got a couple more before I tie this whole culture thing up and hit the rest of the things I'll tell you about. U.S. military. there's a group on one of the aircraft carriers that holds pagan services in the chapel on the aircraft carrier. Remember what I told you about the percentage-wise, the fastest growing quote-unquote religion is Satanism? It's terror. And I remember our guys getting shipped over to like Afghanistan and when they were in Iraq and probably Syria. They weren't allowed to carry Bibles. You have a Quran, but you can't have a Bible because it offended people. And you've got military chaplains now that some of them I got to be friends with over the years. You know, Lifer came online in 99. The war in Iraq started in March of 2003. Matter of fact, we had just come on the air. We just launched the TV program in Tampa about a week or so before the war in Iraq began. And so we were connected with a lot of military people. You know, some people were connected with us while they were stateside, and it was like a connection with the country while they were overseas. A lot of them had parents that forwarded the devotional. So we interacted with quite a few military people, and still do today. And we got, I remember we had dozens of military chaplains that we were in communication with on a frequent basis. All these guys were just saddened because some of them had been in for a while and they were Christians, and you know they weren't even really allowed the gospel anymore. A lot of them just took an early out and retired because they would be they had a calling from God, and they weren't going to compromise that calling. It was better for them just to retire. So you've got the military guys in our military hold pagan services in a chapel on an aircraft carrier. Isn't that great? Let me just hit a quick wrap on some stuff. All these things we've been talking about, the decriminalization of psychedelic mushrooms, okay? What's going on with these various governments and giving free health. These are all this is all part of the culture that we're living in, okay? And we've got now, and now we're going to go back for a second to one of our foundational arguments that really so much of what I talk to you about every night is based on. The vast percentage of the last couple generations never been to church, have no faith background. So we've got a couple generations now living in this country without any of that kind of faith. And a country now that openly accepts unbridled pornography, gambling, alcohol, of course, drugs now in places. And I submit to you that we've got a populace now. You've got kids in their 30s still living with their parents. Kids don't want to own a home. They don't want the hassle. They don't even want to own a car. They'll take an Uber. What I'm trying to explain to you is you've got generations coming up now that look at life different. They've been brought up pretty much to accept killing babies is okay. Any kind of sex is okay with whoever, whenever, however. Whatever you feel like marrying, that's fine. Who are you to tell somebody who they love? In other words, all the truth of God's Word, the absolutes of God's Word, the authority of God's Word has all been just tossed out. And we've got a society now that's operating in total void of any biblical authority. Thus, you've got a culture that is literally deteriorating before our eyes. And I submit to you tonight that we've got, again, generations now with no real faith around, generations that have been brought up to believe all the lies of Satan, a generation that doesn't have very good work ethic, doesn't have much aspirations, happy to have their legal pot and whatever drugs they're going to make legal. And the reason this is trouble, the reason this is important to understand is because you've got a percentage of our populace now that really isn't involved, really isn't interested in how things are run. And one of these arguments I get in with Christians all the time, they listen, politics stinks, it's all flesh, it's nasty, I don't want any part of it, blah, blah. And I get that. I say, listen, I got kids, I got my job, I don't want to think about it, I got things to worry about, I got to pay my mortgage, my job's cut my hours back, and my kids, got to have an operation, I get it. They're just trying to live their life. But see, here's the problem. You didn't have to be totally connected years before because you had a culture that was stable. Okay? That doesn't exist anymore. You've got complete godless people that are in positions of power now that don't believe what God says in the Bible. They don't live by it. Those in authority don't govern by it. And so you've got an increasing, growing percentage of the population that is pretty much checked. Do you know less than 50% of legal people of legal voting ever vote? And that's when everything was, kind of somewhat stable, if you want to call it that. I have no doubt that number is going to probably be in the 70s range pretty soon, which means you're going to be less than about 30% of the people political power to really have control over things. A very small percentage of the populace, and with most of the populace checked out, not even going to realize. Listen, I can't tell you how many people have emailed me over the years. Bill, I just don't understand. I mean, how this whole gay marriage thing come about? And Bill, I don't understand. How come that everybody's like all on board with this abortion stuff? And I'll tell you how it happened. The church left the stage. Elvis has left the building. The church left the building. That's what happened. They went out into their cushy suburbs. They went out and set up their own little subculture. They got off of secular TV, made up their own little big-time TV networks, TBN, Inspiration, Word Network, all of them. Yeah, went out, made their own, set up their own radio networks, had their own publishing companies, had their own music companies. Set it all up so they didn't even have to bother with the world. Oh, happy days. No, oh, sad days. Because now we're reaping what they've sown. We're reaping the godless culture that has been built on the empty ground left by Christians when they ran away. So I talk about these culture things because when you realize that we're supposed to be making a difference in our culture. Paul didn't have to go to Rome. He didn't have to go, try to preach to the Caesars. Probably knew it was probably going to be his death penalty. Got away with time. Paul didn't have to go to Rome. Paul didn't have to go in. Listen, Paul was a Jew of a Jew. He got settled back in Jerusalem after his commitment to Christ. probably had a great mega church going in Jerusalem, nice, comfortable life, been honored and revered. But no, he got on boats where he got shipwrecked. He went to places, where he was challenging the philosophers of the day, preaching a message he knew wasn't popular, thrown in prisons. Read the book of Acts. People always say, well, I like action movies. You like action movies. Go read the book of Acts. You like an action movie. That's real stuff. But Paul wasn't content sitting in the comfort of the four walls of the church in Jerusalem. He got his rear out of Jerusalem and went to preaching the gospel to the known world of his day. So we've got a culture that's literally crumbling before our eyes. It's being the culture day after day, as more saints are dying and they're not being replaced, is growing less Christian. Our influence, to be honest with you, in our culture has long been over, for the most part. If we had any influence in the culture, we wouldn't be talking about what we talk about every night. All right, let me hit a couple other things with you tonight, because there's some other things that are very interesting we had just recently talked about. Leanna Wynn, that's a name you should at least, she's that new president of Planned Parenthood, took over when Cecile Richard resigned after her 12-year reign of terror. Leanna Wynn, she's all upset. BuzzFeed, it's a very liberal website. They thought they were doing Planned Parenthood a favor by trying to kind of like sanitize them a little bit. They have a big puff piece out. Planned Parenthood is going to put a big focus with their new president, Leanna Wynn. A big focus on non-abortion women's health care. Number one, that's an absolute bald-faced lie. Okay, number one, that's a lie. But they created this puff that the intention was kind of give Planned Parenthood a little bit of cover, so they weren't just thought of as an abortion business, which is what they are. Well, the funny thing happened, this Leanna Wynn, she's totally upset at BuzzFeed. She didn't like the article at all. She said, no, we perform abortions here. We're proud of it. I got to be honest with you. There's nothing to laugh about on that issue at all. But it was amusing and comical to watch this lefty site thinking they're doing a good thing by trying to sanitize Planned Parenthood a little bit and take some of the sting out of what they need to do a little bit away, so they could, some of their talking points, well, we just don't provide abortions, we do women's health services. So they thought they were doing a great deed by promoting what little they do outside of killing babies. And the new president, she was not happy at all. No, we kill babies and we're facial recognition. It's here. It's being used in more and more areas. They're testing it in airports now. There's not going to be a day too long. TSA won't even exist. You're just going to walk through a little machine and it's who you are. You've already got a lot of companies using fingerprint technology. In other words, instead of giving people key cards and things like that, you just use your fingerprint. And of course, there's a lot that are now starting to use facial recognition thing. It's being used more and more. And as people use it more and more, let me give you a good analogy. Online banking. I remember when people first started doing online banking. People weren't comfortable with it at all. I remember the arguments that were out there. People weren't happy. People weren't comfortable at all. They wanted to go drive their Wells Fargo, their Regions Bank, their Chase Bank, their Bank of America, wherever it was, their credit union, and make their deposit and write their check. I mean, we're close to the day where you're not even going to see a bricks and mortar bank anymore. That day is so fast you don't even know it. That's because over a period of time, people got accustomed to it. And the resistance broke down, and they utilized it. It became part of their daily life. So they did this recognition and fingerprint stuff. I'm just throwing that out just to let you know that that's a technology that is in growing use now. And I think the airport where you're first going to see it in a major commercial way. Talked to you the other night about robots being counselors. It's already starting. A whole new psychiatry world now, where you never have to go into the psychiatrist's office. You just go on to a video chat circuit and have your session. That means it's just a little jump step away where you won't even be dealing with people. You won't need a video. It'll just be an audio link, and you think the person. How many of you have called credit card companies, or I don't know, any kind of company you might pay bills with, or you call these customer service numbers? And I always had a pet peeve, to be honest with you, about getting somebody in Mumbai. I mean, God bless the people in Mumbai. I'm glad they got a job. But for me, I'm thinking, why can't people in America be doing these jobs, So so I've always had kind of a pet peeve. But now you're talking to these artificial intelligent voice recognition systems, conversation with them. Years ago, it was pretty obvious you were talking to a machine. But they're at a place now where these machines can hold quite a lengthy and continual and cogent conversation. They've also got a new line of artificial intelligent robots that are being designed specifically e-commerce fulfillment. Can you say Amazon? I read a lot of news articles, especially over the holidays, how the Amazon workers they wanted to unionize. Some of them walked out because they were treated like slaves. And I'll never forget, one of them said, "We're not robots." Well, your job will soon going to be done by a robot. And these people, they're afraid to take bathroom breaks. I guess they had a quota. They had so many orders an hour. So it's kind of ungodly. It almost reminds me of reading it, probably what the working conditions were like before unions back in the steel mills and places, industries like that years ago. Back in the beginning of the oil days, Standard Oil, the Rockefellers. I mean, people died all the time on those oil jobs. So a whole new generation. She's in all kinds. This whole Brexit thing is about ready. Within 2 months, you're going to see the same grassroots riots in Britain that you're seeing right now in France, where Macron was trying to raise money for stupid climate change, so he jacked up the gas tax, revolted. Well, you're going to have that same thing in England. England's going to be bad because basically the people of England voted to leave the EU. That's what Brexit is. Brexit. And the EU doesn't want to really let that, obviously, because Britain's really the gem of the whole EU. So they're making these horrible deals for Britain to leave, and May, she's so politically neutered, she can't get anything done now, and they may end up leaving without a deal in place. I mean, just like the whole nightmare in Europe is not over. Matter of fact, it's just starting. God, I got one more thing I want to get to tonight, real quick here. Let me 1 second here. All right, I got time to get this. I didn't want to start this unless I had enough time. I had time because I really want to get this in tonight. And this goes back to last week when I talked to you about the whole artificial intelligence robot issue. Remember some time on that one night last week, and I talked to you about that whole issue. And the bottom line to me was, you're going to soon have robot pastors, which could really open the door once people become comfortable with that, just like they are online banking now. It would really open the door to the possibility of Antichrist. Because again, the Antichrist is going to rule over a one world government. We definitely see how that could happen. A one world economy, very easy to see how that could happen. And a one world religion. I never really, that was the one hang up I've always had, even in recent years when the one world government and the one world economy actually became something that you could really see how that would happen and fall into place. One world religion was always kind of a holdup for me. But as we talked about artificial intelligence, robot pastor, it started to become more clear to me how through technology an Antichrist could literally install a world government. And lo and behold, this morning I was just starting on a couple of my international news services, and I came across this from a Moscow news agency. Listen to this for a second. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church said the capacity of devices such as smartphone risks bringing humanity closer to the level of the Antichrist. He said, control from one point is a foreshadowing of the coming of the Antichrist if we talk about the Christian view. Antichrist, the person, will be the head of the World Wide Web that controls the entire human race. Now listen to this. The leader of the Russian Orthodox Church that humans depend on modern technology will soon result, and very could result, in the coming of the Antichrist. In an interview with Russian media, he says he doesn't oppose gadgets, but he warned against falling into slavery to smartphones. He said that the collection of data, including location, interest, fields, will make it possible for humans to be controlled by external forces. Control from a single point is a harbinger of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is a person that will be at the head of the World Wide Web, controlling the entire human race. Thus, the structure itself presents a danger. If we don't want to bring the apocalypse closer, there should be no single control and access center. That's exactly what I was just talking to you about last week. And again, not trying to scare people, not trying to upset people, not telling you to throw your smartphones in the garbage, none of that. And all these things, I'm talking about the culture tonight. I'm talking about those issues, again, so you have an overall view of the culture, because at the end of the day, God's called us to make it in this culture. How are you going to make a difference in a culture you don't even understand? How are you going to make a difference in a culture that is at a place you don't even recognize? Start talking about the culture. You be talking about all the things we talk about in this program every night. You got to connect with them at some point on their level if you're going to at all begin to talk about the Lord and about the gospel. That's why. All right, listen. We're almost out of time. If you've been watching tonight, you made a decision for Christ, or you haven't made a decision for Christ, I want to give you that chance right now. You know, because at the day, all this stuff is interesting, but at the end of the day, we're all going to be at a place where our family isn't really going to make a difference, because it's just going to be us and God, one of them. At that moment, you either know Jesus or you don't. If you've never made that decision, I want you to pray with me right now and never have to wonder or worry again about where your eternity will be spent when this brief journey is over. Pray with me now. Dear Lord, I come at a sinner asking you to forgive me my sins. Lord, I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth that Jesus is the Lord. Come into my heart, Lord Jesus, and take my life now and forevermore. I free you. From this day forward, my life belongs to you. Use it for your name. In Jesus' name I pray. My email address is on the screen. If you prayed that prayer, not because of a few words, but because of what you were doing in your heart by faith, God says, the Bible says, you're saved. You're a new creature in Christ. Got a book I'll send you, won't cost you anything. Just drop me an email, bkellerlifer.com. I'll get it right out to you. And also, if you ever need prayer for anything, don't hesitate to email me, bkellerlifer.com. And I will get back away and we will pray with you for whatever your needs are, okay? Now, tomorrow night's a very important program because I'm planning on using the whole program just for the roles of men. And this is even more critical now than ever, again, because in this crumbling culture, one of the reasons it's crumbling is because the foundation of our culture, the family, is crumbling. And in this process, we are like totally at loss at what men are supposed to be doing, women are supposed to be doing, the roles each one are supposed to play. And you've got forces out there that basically want to neuter men. You know, I mean, it kind of, the door is kind of open with this Me Too stuff, which is legitimate, and it's an issue that probably should have been dealt with a long time ago, but it's now been hijacked and it's been leveraged to basically just neuter men and make men feel ashamed for being a man. This whole toxic masculinity. And again, I know these don't sound like spiritual issues, but they are. Because men have been given specific roles by God to play, and so have women. And can men play other roles? Yes. Can women play roles? Yes. But you know what? When you do it God's way, when it's done God, it works. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night. Okay? I love and care about you so much. Pray you have a great night tonight. And we will see you back here in 23 short hours. God bless.
What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it